morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, January 21st, and welcome to 7investing Live. This is our live stream interactive event that we host every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern to highlight and invest in some of the stock market's most intriguing opportunities. My name is Simon Erickson. I'm the founder of 7investing. You can check out all of our long-term investment recommendations and get started with your 7-day free trial right there at 7investing.com/subscribe. I'm also so excited to welcome back my guest today, Steve Symington, a former advisor of mine and colleague at 7investing, as we're going to talk about the state of AI today. We're talking about how smart is AI really right now, and where's it going in the future, and how can you invest in it? And we're going to be focusing on a company called UiPath as our stock of focus. Steve, I know I speak for everybody watching this show when I say welcome back to 7investing Live.
Yeah, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. We
talk for
days.
Steve, and you were so early in AI. I mean, like you were doing AI stuff probably 15 years before anybody even knew what AI was. Right. And so I always love to hear your perspective on this. To set the table, though, as we get into this, Heather, if you could show this story from Salesforce, we are starting to see there are tech companies out there who are starting to use AI in some of the roles that human beings used to be doing. And Salesforce was one of the examples when earlier this year, it says that, hey, it's going to cut 4,000 of its customer support roles, which are kind of a cost center for the company, because Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, says, hey, I don't need human beings to do those jobs anymore. I can replace that with AI agents. But then also, within a month after that, Salesforce came back and they said, they're not just going to discontinue those jobs. They're going to reappropriate them to sales, where they're actually selling the Agentforce platform that Salesforce has. So this is interesting to me, Steve, because we're now seeing AI that seems like it's able to do some of these well-defined tasks, customer support, things like this. But again, this is me looking at it from maybe a 2-year lens. You've looked at this from almost a 20-year lens. Where does AI stand to do today, and what is it actually capable of doing?
Right, it's capable of. I think the answer is a lot more than people realized. Even a couple of years ago, they're kind of shocked at what it can do now, but it's also not quite as capable as they assume it is. So, what I mean by that is, it's really good at things like automating workflows. It can collaborate, it can augment sort of human thought. It can process data. It can, there's AI chatbots that, can step out and they can have full-fledged conversations with people and, for customer support and sales purposes. And they might not even realize that they're talking to an AI agent. And it's very impressive. But the biggest challenge, I think, if you're looking at the status quo and current limitations, is that, and I think I've said this to you before, is I think of AI agents and LLMs in particular as very confident liars. And so what happens is like I was working with a local company here on their sales side, actually implementing Salesforce, their AI agents. And part of the challenge is that when it gets into the minutia, the nuance of, say, a complicated product and someone's asking questions about it, it struggles to consistently understand that context or the little details. So it'll just confidently say, yes, this is the answer. And they're like, oh, thanks. And then the person watching the chat's like, oh, crap, like got to dive in and correct this, because there's a lot of stuff that AI agents, and anyone who's used ChatGPT and actually double check the answers it gives it when you're doing some sort of research will realize, again, the confident liar part. You really have to trust but verify. So that's the big challenge is it's not great, and people tend to over rely and sort of overestimate what it is truly capable of when it comes down to the nitty gritty.
So if I hear you correctly, then this sounds like it's more of an efficiency tool to give you a recommendation of something, but we're not to the point yet we just completely can trust it because it might be making mistakes.
Right. Yeah. And I think it will get to that point, but it's a little bit like when you think about fully autonomous vehicles, right? Like truly fully autonomous. There's a lot of, we've had lane assist technology for years, and we have automatic braking and that sort of stuff. And even then you get into, Teslas, and they call it fully self-driving, the FSD technology, but it can't do quite everything, and they need you to have your hands on the wheel. And sometimes you need to take over. And that's very similar. That last stretch, that last mile is really difficult to achieve. You can get things 99% of the way there. And AI has kind of been that way for a long, long time. And that was, like the AI I used to work on was on the geospatial side. I was a software engineer, and I was using neural networks and machine learning to extract features from aerial photography and old school LiDAR data. And we'd get a lot of really good data extracted, but there'd be a lot of false positives. You had to go in and clean everything up, and it's very, very, very difficult to make it absolutely perfect. But that's the challenge that engineers are reaching, and I think eventually it reaches the point where it is as perfect or nearly as perfect as a human could be. And we sort of rapidly approached that in the last couple of years, and that's where people are kind of shocked when they interact with AI agents or use them or realize what they do. I think it's come a long way, but it still has a long way to go, even though it feels almost perfect.
I'm glad that you framed it that way, because you're talking about geospatial things. I remember it coming into the healthcare space too, and they just thought, we're going to use AI to interpret everything in the genome, and then kind of 10 years later, we're still figuring things out. And even the experts in this space, right, whether it's Jan LeCun at Facebook or Jeffrey Hinton, who worked at Google and was at University of Toronto, they're even cautioning people like, yes, the headlines sound amazing, and we assume that AI is going to do some amazing things out there, but use some sense when you're interpreting all this. It's still got a long way to go. It's still kind of narrowly defined AI rather than general purpose AI today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Perfectly accurate, all of it.
Yep. And then the other thing, as we kind of talked at the 10,000 foot level about this, is the ecosystems. This is such a complex space, but it's almost like it's similar to what we saw with cloud computing, a decade ago, where it seemed like the front runner was Amazon Web Services, and everybody, they're talking about how great it was to move your software to the cloud and have Amazon host it and take care of all this for you. But then you also saw Salesforce doing the same thing. You also saw Oracle doing the same thing. You saw Google Cloud doing the same thing. You saw all these other companies kind of matching the same capabilities. I feel like we're seeing that today in AI as well. I know that IBM has developed their own internal AI agents. We've seen Microsoft do the same thing. We saw Salesforce do the same thing. And those that aren't developing it internally are a lot of times using open source tools out there. Right. Would you agree with that, Steve? Do you think that this is kind of another stick with the ecosystem you're comfortable with and then expand upon that? Or is this something that there's an independent player that can just, beat these massive enterprise software platforms at their own game?
I think what we see is they all tend to work together, whether people realize it or not. So, we'll talk about UiPath in a minute, but they have outstanding partnerships with OpenAI and Salesforce, and they're tech partners with everybody. So, yes, they are each trying to get people to adopt their own ecosystems and stay comfortable with them, and increase the switching cost effectively, make their products stickier. But they're all sort of behind the scenes working together to make things better. So it's like we're competitors, but we're not, and we're partners, but we're not, and we're sort of frenemies, but we're best pals. And that's kind of the way the software world has worked for a long time. It's tricky because they all tend to grow in tandem, and it does tend to be kind of a win-win. They've realized that working together is a lot more fruitful than trying to destroy each other.
Yeah, the frenemy term is nothing new to those who follow tech companies. It seems like it's always that way. You want to beat them, but you also have to work with them, especially for the good of customers. So let's talk about UiPath. That's a perfect segue, what you just mentioned, because this is a company that it is independent. This is not an arm of a Microsoft or Salesforce, right, but it's developing an orchestration platform called Maestro, which is ensuring that the agents that it creates internally, but also the agents created by other platforms, are actually working in harmony with one another. Perfect name, Maestro, for something like this. Heather, can we show up the UI platform there? It's an image 2B, if you will, but just kind of showing, if you've got different industries that have different needs and have different tasks that you want to start using AI agents to use, Now you've got an orchestration platform that can keep them all together. There's that orchestration layer in the middle, right? By department, by function, or by industry, whatever it might be. UiPath has got Maestro that's playing right in the middle of this. Steve, I like to compare this to being the boss of the office that keeps all of the AI employees working well with one another. That's probably a pretty good strategy to pursue right now, if I heard everything you said earlier correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things about UiPath, one of the things that I actually really liked about it, when I was writing research reports for 7investing about UiPath a few years ago, they essentially, UiPath, one of the things that I really admire about them is that they focused on allowing humans to do things that humans do best, right? And that's kind of their focus, is not necessarily replacing it. Some of that might be optics. They want to say, they don't want to say they're responsible for replacing human jobs, right? But they do want to make people more efficient. And that's one of the bigger challenges from an optics standpoint that this industry has faced, is saying, like, are these bad for people's jobs? But I mean, that's something that we have grappled with for centuries, right? I mean, and you go way back, and no longer do telephone operators exist. For example, you don't call somebody and ask for, to be connected to a different place. There are jobs that get phased out and replaced with things that make us more efficient. So I think this is just another high-tech iteration of that, and that's just sort of the way things have gone. But that's one of the things that's very, very interesting about UiPath is their focus on just allowing humans to be better humans, and then using AI agents as sort of a complementary force to make us more productive.
Yeah. Heather, could we show the other graphic of that too? We had kind of the workflow of what's going on behind the scenes, like to make this a little bit more real. It sounds so ethereal when we talk about some of these, but just show you the coding and the stuff that goes into it. Here's an API workflow of how UiPath might do to pull something out of Slack. You've got to go through all these kind of steps that humans used to have to be, right? You'd have to set up the platform, create an account, assign the credentials, assign a ticket, respond to the ticket, whatever else it might be. If you use software to automate a lot of that stuff, they were calling it, I believe it was robotic process automation, right? Steve was kind of the early
RPA,
RPA. And now it's AI agents, whatever you want to call it today, but it's kind of using automated software rather than human beings' time, like you just said, as a complement to make people more efficient. Steve, tell me about Daniel Dines, man. This guy was super early to the AI agent game, and you kind of saw him before anybody else did, but he was doing some neat stuff out there.
Right. He's the sort of famous for being maybe the richest person in Romania, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah. And the big part of that, I think, is obviously his stake in UiPath, but
and he's founder and CEO, right? When we're talking about it, he's the head honcho at UiPath. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So Dines is he remains the CEO, but he sort of has this vision of, as he says, ushering in the new era of work. And that's exactly what UiPath is working to achieve. And I mean, I think they're continuing to grow. What's very interesting is some of the information that we saw in UiPath's latest quarterly reports was their focus on becoming a priority for the C-suite of their customers.
Let's put that graphic up while Steve's talking about it, if you could, Heather. That's perfect. Yep.
Yeah. So the C-suite focus essentially is what they want to. They want to become a priority for executives to say, you know what, and you look at the customer momentum that they talk about, and large customers in particular, right? They've had a massive increase in customers that are generating enormous amounts of recurring revenue. So the concern, I think, is how fast is that growth, right? I mean, I think last quarter was like 16%. I think they increased their revenue guidance. And it was just last month, I think December 3rd. So 6 weeks ago was when they released earnings. The stock popped hard because the results were better than expected, but it's essentially given up that entire gain since then. Part of that, I think, is broader pressure on tech and the stock market in general. Has kind of come under pressure, and UiPath has sort of faced these very persistent doubts since IPO about how it's able to grow and whether that growth is decelerating. And I think that's the concern. People want to see accelerated growth. I think this is one of those companies that may just gradually kind of just continue to chip away at those doubts. And the stock will just continue to move in the right direction. It could be something where an acceleration in growth would definitely be welcome and help justify what people might otherwise view as, some exorbitant premium, valuation premium that they're paying for the company. But it's one of those stocks that's just felt really unloved for a few years. And that's been kind of a challenge. It's been a frustrating stock to own. I've owned it, but I know there was a certain point last year where it was trading at like nine and change. But we're back up into the $14, $15 range. I can't remember what the latest closing price was. $14.35 right now is where it's trading. So, I mean, we've had a nice little bump from the lows, and this could be something where people who've just patiently built positions will end up being well pleased if the company just continues to execute. But it's got to chip away at those rough expectations and those persistent doubts.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Steve. It's always been said that it's the early bird that gets the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese, right? Sometimes the first mover is great and you're the first one to, do these neat things, but sometimes it's nice to be the second soldier so you don't step on the landmine right in front of you. You see the path on approaching it. I feel like that's so true. I'm going to come to your defense on this one with UiPath, because I do feel like Dines was really ahead of the game on this one. But he had to go out there and learn, what did the market really want? And then how can he adapt his strategy and UiPath's strategy of how to approach this, right? At first, it was doing all this detailed, heavy software coding work. And, people were like, okay, that's good. I don't really understand how this matters. Now you've got out there, you've got Agent Flow, you've got GPT, you've got all the, these other ones that are doing these AI platforms. And I think UiPath was very smart to say, hey, we want to be the middle layer. We've been doing this a lot longer than a lot of these other guys, but we don't want to be the only one you work with. We want to make you the most efficient by integrating with all of them. And that's why you've seen them partner recently with OpenAI. They've got a GPT connector, with Microsoft Azure. They've got their own OpenAI integrated with Azure. They've got another one with Google Gemini. You've got another one with Anthropic out there. All these integrations are not by accident. It's just that UI is saying, hey, just like cloud computing, you can have multi-cloud. You want to have something that pulls them all together and makes them useful for the customer. I'm actually pretty optimistic that I think UiPath is doing the right thing, not only going after the C-suite, like you just mentioned, but also kind of recognizing that this is for the good of customers and they're going to do what they want. We just want to be in the middle of the stack on this.
Yep, I agree.
Yep. Cool. Okay, so this is a neat one. We showed the kind of the results on there of UiPath, like Steve mentioned, the third quarter results, actually accelerating revenue growth. It was up 16% year over year versus 14% in the previous quarter. Also growth in the ARR and over 100% on the dollar-based retention rate. That tends to be, I think, Steve, the things we want to look for a deeply embedded software company. Is not only is it going after the big fish, but is it keeping them happy? Are they spending more money over time? And can they kind of leverage those fixed costs through growing revenue? Is there anything that I missed or that we should be looking at when we're assessing and evaluating UiPath?
No, I mean, there's. I think if bears are going to try and pick something apart, I think you look at net retention rate, right? Which I think we mentioned earlier. I think it was 107% last quarter, and the previous quarter was 108%, right? So people are like, oh, it's decreasing, and they're afraid that might indicate some sort of challenge in maintaining existing customer revenue. It was, I think, a year ago it was like 113%, right? So, yeah, you want to see that going in the right direction, or at least staying steady. 107 to 108%, like. Okay, fine. Like, I'm not that concerned. Those are things that people are going to be keeping an eye on. So even as revenue is accelerating, we want to make sure that net revenue retention kind of remains steady. Otherwise, annual recurring revenue, you watch net new annual recurring revenue as well. They want to see the new annual recurring revenue indicate a potential acceleration going forward. So things are moving in the right direction. It's encouraging, but it's one of those things where if the quarter is not absolutely perfect, it's getting picked apart and it's giving up those gains. I was encouraged by the last quarter, though. It'll be very interesting. I think the next set, March, like week of March 11th, I think is when we should get the next report. So another, month and a half here, we'll be getting another update and see where they are. But should be very interesting to check out those metrics and see what the market picks apart this time.
Yep. I'll open it up at this point. Heather, if you have any questions or our audience has any questions, I'll come to you in just a minute. But as always, I'll start with the first one. Steve, 3-time recommendation, on our 7 investing scorecard. They've all got your name on it. I would be so bold as to say that once again, I think you were a little early on this one. I think you are kind of this clairvoyant, visionary analyst that sees things before others don't. But it looks like there's some promising things here with UiPath developing here recently. It's now a $7.7 billion market cap. It's shown some encouraging signs in the last couple of quarters, certainly with the partnerships it's been signing. Where do you stand on UiPath as a stock investment? Is this a screaming buy right now? Conservative buy, hold, sell? Where do you stand on Path?
I'd say conservative buy, a little bit like it was one of those, like you mentioned, I tend to be early. I think we talked about Lemonade last time. I tend to find these things and think that's going to be big. And I think I've learned over the years not to jump in too fast. I like to build positions over time. So just continue to sort of passively add as I can and build up a position, dollar cost average my way in. And when it eventually does what I think it'll do, it ends up being huge. So that's what, when you see like the SoFis and the Lemonades of my side of the scorecard that's still active at 7 Investing, I think UiPath will eventually play out the same way. But I think I'd say conservative buy. I'm continuing to add selectively to this company. So.
Yep. And we don't talk a whole lot about the technicals, certainly on this show, but some things that I've noticed is that the trading volumes are increasing. You can see there's confidence building, price targets are going up from the sell side. It seems like the institutions are becoming more comfortable with UiPath, certainly in the last 6 months than they had in the previous couple of years. So that's encouraging as well.
Yep.
Heather, anything you want to ask Steve or talk about with AI agents or UiPath specifically?
There we go. Wouldn't let me come back on the session for some reason, but I'm here.
We need UiPath to take care of that for us, to automate that.
Yes, we do. Well, first, this looks like such a cool program and would have fixed so many problems I've had in the past, but one I've never heard of, which I guess is kind of my question is, I'm pretty involved in the AI space, as in I record these and I follow, and I have never heard of this before.
Right.
Is that because it's out of Romania, or is it because it's so specialized in this automation and programming space? Is this one most people have heard of that I just somehow magically missed?
Right. If you're a consumer, it's not like you wouldn't have heard of it in the same way you've heard of ChatGPT, for example. Right. It's not something an individual is going to step out and go use in the same way that these big LLMs have taken off, and you can create an account and log in and be like, yeah, I can use this right away. This is very much like an API driven, and APIs, we're talking about application programming interfaces, right? For coders at a company that's going to build out an agent to do things to help their corporation or their business be more efficient. So this is very much focused, not so much on direct to consumer models, but it's more like a business to business kind of thing. So this will be something where your company realizes it can create maybe a chat bot, or it can create something to more effectively absorb the insurance documents that people are uploading to your portal and parse everything out. Those are the things that UiPath focuses on. So as individuals, I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of it. But as a company, you get to a certain point where you realize, okay, maybe AI agents could help me out. What's out there? You're probably going to stumble on a UiPath.
My second question is, do they have much of a moat? Because I feel like there were a lot of different API agents when I was looking about 2 years ago to solve some problems I had. And then after that, are there big changing costs once you're set up with them? Do you need to keep the reoccurring feed to keep everything working, or no?
Right. Yeah, it's sort of one of those, I think they focus a lot on usage based, and it's something where you can continue to generate more revenue depending on how much you utilize their platform. So as far as moats go, I think very indicative of the strength and stickiness of their platform is if we looked at that customer momentum slide that we had before, that scaling large customers section, I think they had over 2,500 customers generating at least 100,000 in recurring revenue each. Right. And there's a handful of those that are generating over $1 million in ARR. So it's kind of wild to see, these companies are pouring money into it because it's an obvious, the value proposition is so clear to them. They say, you wouldn't have companies pouring more than 100,000 in recurring revenue into a platform if it wasn't good for that company. And I think that the fact that number is still growing, that they've added, nearly 300 customers that are spending 100,000 or more a piece over the past year to their customer cohort is pretty telling.
One more thought on that as we close this out, Steve, is I know that in mid 2024, so almost 2 years ago now, the company's CEO was not Dines at the time. It was a gentleman named Rob Enslin, who then, got promoted to be the sole CEO. And then he resigned a couple of months later, probably because of, at least from the scuttlebutt that I've seen, disagreements on the strategy and disagreements with Dine on the approach. There's no wonder why they're promoting in their investors relationship materials those large customers, because we know that was what Dine said. No, we've got to get in there. We've got to play nice with other companies. We've got to get in there with the C-suite. I mean, I think it's working, and perhaps some of the issues with UiPath in the past was a disagreement on what the strategy should be. And I've certainly seen over the last 2 years, they've straightened the ship out. And I think this is a much better path to go going forward.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Say that 10 times.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that the company's faced fairly significant doubts. There were sort of, I don't know, they said for personal reasons he resigned. Rob Enslin, I think, was his name.
Yep.
And I think there were rumblings that there were conflicts between him and the CFO at the time, and so they were. Yeah, I think you hate to see, C-suite shakeups at big businesses like this, but Dines is able to step right back in. We'll see, I guess, how that all plays out. It's hard to tell what those disagreements are, between the CFO and a CEO, but it does make you worry, and it's something to definitely watch. It seems like the company's obviously moving in the right direction. Now they're continuing to grow. The platform, like we mentioned, seems sticky. But yeah, we'll see. I guess time will tell in that case. But that definitely earned some side eyes from Wall Street, where they're like, "What's going on over there?" And
I think it's a step in the right direction, right? 100 times out of 100, I would rather have leadership of a company focusing on the operations, focusing on signing partnerships out there, focusing on keeping their head down to run the business, rather than pandering to Wall Street or focus on short-term margins and stuff.
Yep.
And so I would say this is a step definitely in the right direction for UiPath going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're one of those beautiful software companies where they're operating at like an 85% gross margin, and that's continuing to improve. So operationally, things are moving in the right direction as far as efficiency and cash flows and such. So.
Yep. One to keep an eye on there, PATH. That's on the NYSE if you're interested in following along with UiPath. You can also see all of our coverage at 7investing.com/PATH or 7investing.com/any ticker you'd like to see our research coverage on. We have free company pages for your research needs, and please go ahead and check those out and tell us what you think. Steve, man, once again, really appreciate you being part of the show, man. You and I have been friends for, I think it's going on 15 years now, and you're always my go-to guy when it comes to software and AI things. Really appreciate you being part of the 7 Investing Live show this morning.
Happy to be here, man. Time's flown.
Time has flown indeed. And again, if you want to see all of our recommendations, all of our stock market recommendations, and our January best buys, our 5 highest conviction ideas that are publishing today, check out 7investing.com/subscribe. Again, your first 7 days completely free to check out everything that we have to offer. On Friday's show, we're going to be talking about 2 new stock opportunities. I'm actually going to reveal our watch list opportunities which are Broadcom and Zeta Global Holdings, two other interesting companies right there in the AI and software space. Going to be really exciting to talk about what I'm seeing with both of those and why they might need a spot on your investing watch list if you're interested. So we're looking forward to talking about that on Friday. Again, my guest today is Steve Symington, Steve_Symington, if you'd like to follow along with Steve on Twitter. And we'll see you again on Friday. Hope you have a wonderful week. Talk to you again soon.